Reddit. I had an SUV pace me today while I was running. Upon taking my headphones off, I realized they were playing Eye of the Tiger and cheering me on. What is your most bad butt moment? I rugby tackled and performed a citizen's arrest on a guy in my local supermarket who had been caught stealing and pushed over an elderly cashier making his escape. He had at least 40 yards on me and I managed to catch him up and keep him restrained until the manager made his way out. I was also wearing a suit and sunglasses at the time. He probably thought he was gonna get assassinated. I went to a religious high school about 35 miles from my home. I had about the longest drive to school of anyone who went there. After I got my license, I earned the gas money and some extra by picking up other students on my way to school. Now, this was Michigan, and picking those kids up meant taking back roads, which in the winter was sometimes a bit dicey. One afternoon, I've got the whole bunch in the car, and I'm headed down one of the more significant back roads. There's very little traffic. I can only see one car while ahead of us on the road. Suddenly, I see that car starts to fishtail. Black ice, I think, and start to slow way down. I'm doing about 15 miles per hour when we hit that spot, but still, we start to slide. It's the craziest black ice I've experienced to this day. Nothing elsewhere. And then suddenly, we've got almost no traction at all. But I'm going slow, and I can control the slide. Except then I glance up, and that car that was fishtailing way ahead of us, it's sitting in the middle of the damned road, in the middle of an intersection with another lonely back lane, just sitting there. I can see it's also packed with people, and the driver is looking down and fiddling with something. I realize that there's no way I can stop the car before we get there, and worse, because we're on a decline, we're starting to move faster. He's nearly sideways on the road, blocking the left side completely. There's just enough room that I might be able to get by on the right, between the other car and the stop sign. I stop trying to brake, because it's not doing any good anyway, and try to steer for that gap. The two girls in the backseat are screaming. By some kind of miracle, we hit the gap perfectly, with a few inches to spare on either side, which is far more luck than skill. I freely admit, I have just enough time to glance left at the other car, and see the driver's startled face looking up at me. But as soon as our tires hit the intersection of the two roads, the black ice ends. I have full traction, and we go on our way, very carefully. Nobody says a word. I let out the two girls at their house. They say nothing. I let off the freshman boy riding shotgun, and he hops out, pokes his head back in, and says, "I just have to say, that was awesome," and runs into his house. About 10 years ago I was running my first marathon. It was cold and raining, and I had only lost half the weight I needed to lose, so I was hurting pretty bad at the end. Miles 1924 were through the rich end of town. Rich people don't cheer, and I was far enough back that there was 5,100 yards between runners. So I was alone, tired, and cold. Around mile 22 I was wondering if I would make it when someone opens the door of one of the huge houses and walks down to the street under an umbrella. Without saying a word he reaches into his pocket, pulls out a kazoo, and starts playing Gonna Fly Now, aka the theme from Rocky. That kept me going for another mile, and at that point I was close enough to the finish that I knew no matter how miserable I was, I could make it. Since then I have lost more weight and taken 1.75 hours off my marathon time, fast enough that I can place in my age group at some smaller races. Fetch my kazoo from the parlor would you dear, I have some inspiring to do. I once wiped out while snowboarding by hooking the nose end in a pretty solid chunk of snow. Instinctively, I jumped and flew right over the chunk of hard snow, inadvertently doing a full front flip. I landed that. I've never done a snowboarding front flip, let alone any kind of flip, apart from the one I did completely by accident. Please tell me someone witnessed this. Some dude yanked my iPhone out of my hand on the subway. He really didn't expect me to chase after him. Got my phone back and had him arrested. I'm still waiting for the day my physical fitness comes in handy. I used to work at an ice cream shop in high school. During a crazy rush, as I scooped ice cream and placed it on a cone, the cone broke and the ice cream fell. Without missing a beat, I swung the scoop toward the falling ball of frozen deliciousness and caught it before it hit the floor. The whole store gave me a round of applause. When I'm driving and I see someone running and looking like they're flagging, I like to roll down the window and call out, "Frick yeah, you got this." I get like 50% flip offs and 50% waves thumbs up. I'm sorry, when I run and people yell things at me, I usually can't make out what they say over my breathing music, so I just flip them off assuming they're being mean. I was about 13 I think and went to a sleepaway basketball camp. I was a tall lanky white kid with okay coordination, so not a standout player in the least. Especially because I had a rim at home but loved to lower it to like 8-9 featuring so I could dunk. Anyway, the people in the camp are pretty good overall and I'd say half the kids were black and the other half were anything else. The camp is moving along and I'm doing alright in my games but nothing noteworthy. Then one night, there is to be a dunk contest. They are going to start at 8 featuring and progressively raise the rim, so not a contest for style. Still, the entire camp, 100 plus kids 12-17, watch everyone go. It was just my skill level group at this point. All my useless practice suddenly had value. My first turn came up and I threw down a reverse double pump jam that was by far the most stylish that anyone had done to that point. The place went absolutely nuts. No one saw it coming. I had kids clapping me up for the rest of camp. The proudest moment of my basketball career. TLDR. White kid sends basketball camp into frenzy with dunk. On a low rim but still. I was once on my way to work when I noticed a very heavy-set woman trying her best to jog down the street. As she huffed and puffed her way down the block, I noticed a school bus approach from around the corner. I immediately feared for this woman, as kids can be pretty brutal. As the bus approached the woman, I saw a window slide down and 2 heads pop out from it and expected the worst. To my surprise, it wasn't heckling but rather words of motivation. "Keep it up, you're doing great." I couldn't have been more surprised and I don't think the woman could have either, as I am sure she had dealt with bullying before. The bus drove off and she waved and smiled back at them and soon jogged by me with the utmost confidence. It was a great moment to encounter and I hope it helped change her life. TLDR. Kids aren't always shitheads. TLDR. Promised to show cute Russian girl around NYC. She got harassed by 3 guys. Pretended to be Secret Service to escort her away. I was showing a friend of mine from Russia around New York City. She had never had the chance to really explore the city much and she was a little scared to do so on her own. So I told her to meet me at Grand Central that night and I'll show her around. I had a job interview that afternoon and I was already going to be in the area, so I'll swing by and pick her up. That morning I suited up for my interview. Went well but didn't get the job. I left the building and headed off to pick her up. She told me she was gonna wait for me by the clock on the main floor. I got there a little late. The sun was going down at this point. When I finally found her, she being harassed by 3 guys trying to get her to go out drinking with them. Real bros and obviously buttholes. They had obviously hit the bottle hard before heading in. She was dressed to party, but I was told that it was just how girls in Russia dress when they go out. Go figure. I walked right up to them, with my sunglasses on, black suit, and the earpiece from my cell phone headset in. I took my most serious tone and said, "Ma'am, your detail has arrived. Would you please follow me?" The guys looked really confused for a second, and thankfully she took the cue and thanked me and walked past me, leaving them all stunned. Before I turned around to follow, I just nodded and said gentlemen before following after her. We burst into laughter once we were out of the building. Conversely, my brother was jogging in inner Baltimore a few years ago, and someone drove by and threw a full cup of pee at him. It was still warm and very foamy. When I was 13, I was the only white kid on my Pop Warner football team. We played a game against an all-white team and absolutely destroyed them. In the post-game huddle, one of my teammates turned to me and said, "Yo, Paul, no offense but them white boys was be." The coach turned to me and said, "What you mean no offense, Paul? He an honorary Negro." Still the proudest moment in my life to that point. Note, long time lurker who made an account to post this. I had been on a walk one night and it started to rain. So naturally I decided to run back home before I got too wet. Well, it started really raining hard at one point, and I remember running past a house where a bunch of people were hanging out on their porch watching the rain. I get the good idea to raise my hands as I run past their house and just start whooping. They all cheered for me and clapped. It was fantastic. I'm imagining you crab walking like Zoidberg in front of their house. Awesome. Hoop 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 hoop. I was a really white nerd in high school, but I had some good genes, so I was relatively athletic. I liked sports a lot but was too much of a bee to join the school teams, so whenever it was gym I'd just convince a bunch of people to play football outside. This became a daily thing, but nobody really ever got me the ball since they assumed I was total crap. Well, one day, they finally threw me the ball. I caught it and started running upfield, and this dude, he was black, came at me from my right, so I quickly stopped and he swung his arm in my direction as he went past me. His hand knocked my glasses off my face and they fell in front of me. Since I had just stopped, his momentum carried himself directly in front of me before he managed to stop. Since he was still leaning to his left, I decided to cut off to the right to get away from him, but in the middle of it I realized my glasses were still on the ground. So I stopped myself in mid-cut to the right. He lunged at me. I ducked underneath him and cut to the left, grabbed my glasses off the ground in one kick butt fluid motion, stuck them on my face and ran off for a touchdown while he ate dirt. Directly after this happened, our quarterback, who was also black, yelled out, "What the frick? Insert dude's name that I juked. That white mother sucker just stole your blackness." It was basically the greatest moment ever, and after that day they finally got me more involved in the game as well. I was feeling daring one day on the ski hill. There was a group of Red Bull athletes who were meeting at the base of the hill at the end of a jump. I went off the jump and landed my first ever backside rodeo flip. I was so excited about it but tried to keep my cool. One of the Red Bull athletes was like, "Dude, that was awesome." I then removed my goggles, revealing my lady face, and said, "Thanks." Ballinest moment of my life. I dislocated my ring finger and broke 2 bones in the palm of my right hand playing rugby when I was 16. My hand got stamped on at the bottom of a ruck and I could feel the bones cracking. I went to the sideline, got my finger readjusted and my hand taped up, and played for the next 60 minutes in agony with limited movement in my hand. 2 minutes left, I broke down the sideline and had to hand off, stiff arm for the Americans, the last defender with my broken hand to score the winning try. My uncle broke his hand during a rugby game as well. According to my dad and grandparents, he came home and noticed a piece of bone catching on his jacket after finishing the full game. I once had the courage to tell someone who was in my way to please move over. That mother promptly stepped aside. I work at a restaurant and one day in there it got decently busy. I was rushing around, doing restaurant things, and all of a sudden this kid, maybe a year old, knocks their mom's cup of water off the table. I was walking by the table at the time and, without even thinking, caught the glass of water before it hit the ground. A very minimal amount of water was spilled. The woman just looked at me in awe, and instead of acting awesome, all I could say was, "I totally wasn't expecting that to happen." I'm gonna go all hipster for a second, but I grew up skateboarding a lot. This is before skating was semi-mainstream. Shaun White didn't have a clothing line at Target, and people thought of Jason Lee as a professional skater, not an actor. Anyway, I got pretty good by the time I was about 14-15. Then my parents moved us to a different state. I slowly quit skating cause none of my new friends did it, but I've always still kinda kept my old skating abilities. Fast forward 20 years, I now have 3 kids, oldest is 14. About a year or so ago I came out of our house to find him and his friends out trying to ollie, with little success, on the street. I asked to borrow one of their boards and told them to put a toy dump truck in the middle of the street. I then proceeded to ollie over the truck, then do a kickflip. I stopped, gave the board back, and went on with my business. All their faces were dumbfounded. Before that, I was just another dad, but since then, I've been the cool dad who knows how to skate, lol. Once while me and some friends were drinking on a buddy's deck in winter, I decided it would be bright to try and walk across his frozen pool. I made it one step and went right through. My one leg was still on the deck, the other, along with most of my body fully submerged, and, heroically, I had saved my beer, raised in the air, safe from harm. Source, Canadian. Once I did this on my crocket with a cyclist. I pretended to be pedaling my motorcycle while riding next to him. Turned out the cyclist happened to be my friend's dad. Laughs were had. Once, in middle school, a kid I knew was riding a non-street legal dirt bike home at night and a cop rolled up on him. He started pretending to pedal and the cop laughed and drove off. My husband was driving down a road by our home and saw a bobcat walking on the side of the road. Further down the road he saw a jogger. He rolled down his window and warned her about the bobcat. She just shrugged and kept running. At my friend's grad party there were about 100 people chanting my name towards the end of an intense flip cup match. Pretty cool but a little embarrassing. I used to have Eye of the Tiger as my ringtone. I was walking out of a pizza shop once carrying 3 pizzas and a 2-liter when my cell phone started ringing in my pocket. I didn't have a hand free to answer it, so my phone just kept playing the song. A drunk guy was standing outside of the bar next door smoking a cigarette and he started yelling, "Hey yo Adrian." I did it. I live in the suburbs of Philly, so he had an authentic Philly accent. Between the accent and being drunk, he sounded just like Stallone. A couple of weeks after 9/11, I was out for a jog. I'm Indian so I can look Arab from a distance. In Idaho, as I was running and crossing a street, looking both ways carefully before I crossed, a black pickup that looked like it was yielding for me slammed on his throttle and careened toward me. Luckily I leaped out of the way and he only hit my legs along his headlight. Not exactly badass because I peed myself a little equals. That's just messed up. At a high school football game I won a raffle to kick a field goal at halftime to win some free food. I used to play football, so when I went out to kick the football team ran up and started chanting my name. I felt very badass, until I missed the field goal. At first I was like, D, but then I was like colon. There's lots so no one will probably see this, but I was in an abusive relationship. The guy trapped me in my bedroom once, started pushing me down, threatened that if I called the police I'd be dead before they got there, etc. I didn't defend myself. I couldn't seem to break out of this cocoon of is this really freaking happening to me? I started taking self-defense courses. I was determined it would never happen again. He started in on me again after a few weeks. See also, cycle of abuse. And I didn't disconnect. I beat his butt. I almost broke my own wrist, but I did break his nose. And he finally moved out and left me alone. I felt like I was Xena or some crap. Good for you for standing up for defending yourself. It was my birthday when I did service. Suddenly 300 men began to sing happy birthday during roll call. Was pretty neat. Similar thing as OP, me being on a mountain bike driving uphill with a dumpster truck driving next to me, keeping my speed and blocking the traffic behind us. Dude, you're going 30 kilometers per hour. That's quite neat. They stayed next to me for like 2 minutes and cheered for me. Felt awesome. As a black guy, I feel like the only time that I'm legally allowed to get angry is when someone drops an N-bomb on me. It's like getting a gold star in Super Mario. You're untouchable. Donald Glover. It has only happened once, and I don't like to tell the story, but I'm actually kind of proud of it. I was out at a bar with some friends, trying to find a girl I could take back to my twin bed and disappoint twice before 4 AM. Apparently, one guy at the bar didn't like me talking to someone who wasn't also black, which is fine. Have outdated opinions, but keep it to yourself, buddy. Instead of addressing me, he walked up to her and said, "Why the heck are you taking to this?" And yeah, he was drunk, but that's a worse excuse than honey. She tripped and fell on my dong. I swear. I grabbed his shoulder and spun him towards me, grabbed him by the collar and shoved him against the wall like a 90s sitcom bully. All I did was dong my fist and I wasn't going to hit him because I don't need assault charges. But he flinched super hard. That was all I needed, so I'll let him go. But it felt freaking awesome. To the girl's credit, she looked rightfully appalled by the guy, but we still didn't hook up. I could lie and say we did, but this is the internet, goddammit. Nobody would do that. Just go on the internet and tell lies. I have been informed, and I truly appreciate this, that this was actually assault and what I am thinking of is battery. Learn from my mistakes. Just give drunk fricklets the stink eye from now on, so well can keep telling funny stories to each other. Upvote for truth. justice and disappoint twice before 4 AM. That crap was funny. I was walking into the early shift on Black Friday with my headphones on. The intro to Chevelle's The Clincher came on right when I got out of my car. I was awesome until my keycard didn't work on the door and I slammed face first into it. When Black Friday was in the morning, my friend and I would go to the bars, get drunk and go to Waffle House before work. Still drunk, we always pretended we were like rock stars and all these people were waiting for to see us. A while back I helped this girl out with some finance homework, and she promised to bake me some awesome brownies to say thanks. So a few weeks go by, and yesterday I was attending a seminar that was being given by a vice president of a huge Canadian bank. After the seminar, I waited 15 minutes to go talk to the speaker to inquire about the industry, employment, etc. Halfway through our conversation, I eventually built up the courage to ask about a potential internship position at his firm, trying to balance modesty and self-promotion at the same time. Just as I finish explaining my motivation to work in the industry, the girl I had helped in finance, who is really hot BTW, walks up to me and hands me a huge platter of brownies, literally out of the freaking blue. Thanks quote of the hour. I could never have passed my exam without your help, and she walks away. I turn to the VP to see him holding out his business card with a huge smile on his face. I'm supposed to meet with him in the near future for an interview. Gym class, swimming edition. There is free swim before class starts while everyone shows up and gets dressed. Once everyone is there, we swim laps to warm up, then proceed with the scheduled activities. The diving board is the most fun, so I went off that as often as I could before class. One day while I'm waiting for the person in front of me to dive, I made joking bet with the coach that if I could do a backflip the class could skip warm-up laps. He said backflips are too easy, if you can do a front flip you're on. So I start practicing like mad and of course land a couple wrong but got it worked out. I call him on the bet but he says I have to do it once everyone is ready for class. So I keep practicing and eventually everyone is ready. I get up to the board and everyone is watching and it is suddenly quiet. I walk forward and jump. For a split second I think I'm going to blow it. My mind is screaming NOOO, like my life flashing before my eyes. I can see them all taunting me for failing. Instead I pull up into the flip as hard as I could and make the rotation with room to spare. It was my best flip yet. Even underwater I could hear the class erupt and I came back up to the surface with my arm up like I had just won the gold. Not really a moment, but I was diagnosed with T-cell lymphoma 11 years ago. It was stage 4 and I was 10 years old. Yesterday at the gym I was doing part of my workout on the heavy bag, and when I stopped and looked up I saw 2 teenagers staring at me. When I looked at them they kinda scampered off. I was confused, until I realized I might have scared them. It made me feel like a badass. I don't think of myself as scary, but when I use the heavy bag I get pretty into it. Also I've been growing facial hair for this month, so that might have contributed. I have a similar story about running. I run at a local park. One day it was about 45 and raining, but I decided to be a bad butt and run anyways. Between the bone-chilling cold and running on an empty stomach I started retching. I turned to go home and started to puke bile up right at an intersection. I looked up and 3 jarheads are whooping and cheering me on from their truck. I gave them a wave and stood straight up and kept running for another 1.5 miles. Woo. I was jogging once kind of late at night in a poor part of town on a pretty abandoned road. This souped up town car zooms past me bumping some ridiculous bass, then stops, turns around and wheels in behind me. I can't see in the windows and there's no one else around and I'm starting to get a little nervous. The window rolls down and it's 4 or 5 guys who looked like gangbangers, wearing the colors and everything, and they said, "Yo, homeboy, how far you running?" And I said I was doing a 12-mile loop and was like on mile 8, and they were like, "Holy crap, that's so far, man. That's ridiculous." Later, and they sped off. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.